think what I found is people tend to ignore pain as long as it allows them to be ignored. No
Mhm.
one ever set a goal to go to a nursing home,
Mhm.
but it does happen by default.
Mhm.
You have to do something, you have to take active part to prevent that.
Hi, and welcome to Lead Well. Welcome, Eileen Kopsaftis. Is that the right way of pronouncing your last
Yes,
name
my
by the way?
husband would be very proud of you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let me share a few things about you before we start our conversation. Eileen, you are a licensed physical therapist with over 30 years of experience. You don't show that, and we'll come to that, I'm sure. And you have been specializing in manual therapy and applied functional science. You are also a certified MELT method instructor and a nutrition educator diploma holder from Wellness Forum Institute for Health Studies. So lots of education, lots of certifications and diplomas. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from you because I know your mission is to help people live pain-free without drugs or surgery. And for that, you have a move without pain approach that we
Mhm.
will definitely talk about. And I know you're also passionate about aging well
Yeah.
and maintaining the function. And so you offer online programs and also consultations. And you have written two books where one is focused on pain or not having pain, I guess, and the other one on aging. So you are empowering others to take control of their health. Isn't that wonderful? Welcome, Eileen.
Yes, thank you. That is my passion. I love to change people's lives for the better. Yes.
That's wonderful. So let's start with looking into this question of pain because many people also around me they assume pain is just part of aging. I know, for example, my mom when she was my age, she said, "When you're waking up in the morning and you're over 50 and you don't have any pain, then you're dead." And I'm like, no, I will never go there. I don't want to be there. And I guess there are a lot of misconceptions out there in the world. So, what are the biggest misconceptions that you come across?
Well, probably the biggest misconception is believing pain is normal.
Hmm.
And I have a YouTube channel and I do a lot of videos on pain, obviously aging, but also mindset and beliefs and understandings. And it's not about, I think the biggest thing about mindset is when you've been fed a narrative your entire life, your belief system is based on what you've been fed, not necessarily what's true. I kind of think of myself as a truth teller because my experience is based on the truths that I've seen, as well as the information, the education that I've acquired. And I can tell you, I have worked with many centenarians who lived a very high quality of life. They were still shopping and cooking and cleaning and doing their own finances and exercising and spending quality time with those they love. Their life was beautiful. They weren't waking up every day in pain.
Mm.
And then on the flip side, I've seen many people who were decades younger whose lives were misery from the time they opened their eyes until the time they closed their eyes. And usually during the night, it wasn't so hot either.
Mm.
So I've seen both sides of the coin. And I can tell you that if the narrative we've been fed is true, I wouldn't have met these people in their 90s, over 100, their 80s, their 70s,
Mm.
living quality lives free of pain and fully productive. So it begs the question, what's the difference? How can someone have the life I just described or end up in a nursing home in their 70s, wheelchair bound, 50 pounds overweight, on 25 medications, and needing assistance for hygiene when they have to use the toilet?
Mhm.
What's the difference between those
Mhm.
people? And
Mhm.
that's what I've spent most of my life studying and learning, understanding, and then teaching.
Wow. Wow. So was there any personal experience that made you look into that subject?
Well, it's funny you asked that. I don't know that I don't have any great transformation story aside from my own thirst for knowledge and understanding. I do have a very strong faith. I do feel that that's a huge part of how I've come to be who I am. However, I remember when I was younger, I always had this belief that I was going to live a very long life. Whenever I would read a book that had an older character in their 90s or whatever, and they had wisdom to share, and people sought them for help and they could contribute no matter their age, I always thought that's going to be me. That's
Mm,
going to be me. I don't
mm,
know why. I just think it's in my DNA for some reason.
mm,
Also, my father's family has a lot of longevity.
mm.
Most of them made it way into their 90s, and most of them had their faculties and they were doing pretty well. My grandfather, he had a stroke in his 80s, and the following summer, he was back out on the tractor in the fields. He
Wow.
was a farmer. And I was fascinated with him. He had lost his thumb in some farming equipment and he would roll his own cigarettes. He didn't exactly live a healthy life, but watching him roll those cigarettes, missing that thumb, just fascinated me as a child. But I watched him. He worked hard. He never stopped life. And I think a lot of the times people stop life because of the narrative they've been fed.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, if someone is currently experiencing pain, chronic pain, what is the first thing that they should do?
Well, I think the first thing is to seek out someone who sees them as a whole body. Very often, and my profession is just as guilty of this, we see people as a body part.
Mhm,
So if someone has chronic knee pain, they're seen as a knee that walks in the door,
mhm,
or a shoulder that walks in the door, or a neck. And, some people have more than one body part that hurts. They'll have one body part that is the focus of their attention. I cannot tell you how many people have contacted me and told me, oh, yeah, I'm pretty healthy. I don't really have any problems. I just want to get rid of this shoulder pain. And then I get talking to them and they're on 4 medications. And well, what are the medications for? And then they'll tell me, and then I'll say, oh, but, and I'm trying to get them to you just said you were healthy, but you're on 4 medications. It's like this disconnect people have.
mhm, mhm,
And then they'll say, and I'll say, well, do you have any other issues of pain? And then they'll tell me, oh, yeah, I have a back problem. And I'm like, oh, well, how long have you had that? Oh, well, that's not why I'm contacting you. I've had that forever. That's not my problem.
mhm,
So it's this disconnect we have. We're so used to, I think what I found is people tend to ignore pain as long as it allows them to be ignored.
mhm,
And then once it starts stopping their daily life or it inhibits them from doing the activities they love or something they have to do, like, oh, I can't do my job now.
mhm,
But they've been ignoring it for 6 months, 9 months, a year and a half, and then it progresses, it snowballs.
mhm.
And the issue here is it's not normal. And a lot of the times people have this misconception about pain tolerance. And they think that if they can tolerate the pain, they don't have to deal with it. It's too inconvenient.
It also is like it makes them a hero because they can have
Yes,
pain
yes, they
without
have this persona of
complaining.
I have a
Yes.
very high pain tolerance. I
Hmm.
can tolerate a lot of pain. And
Hmm.
what I find, and I say this with respect, but I find it extremely amusing that one person thinks they can perceive the intensity of how their pain would be perceived by another person. And what I mean by that is, oh, to me, this pain is like a 3, but somebody else, it would be a 10. And how do you know it would be a 10 to someone else?
Hmm.
I find that fascinating and amusing at the same time. We have no idea what someone else would perceive something as. And
Hmm.
if someone is seeking help for pain and other people are thinking, oh, they're just a wimp, they have a low pain tolerance, they don't want to, I'm thinking, no, they're actually wise because they realize something's wrong. I'm going to address it now before it stops my daily life.
Hmm.
So, I mean, if someone comes to me and they just had this pain that started maybe a month ago, it's a lot easier and a lot faster to resolve it than something they've had for 25 years that snowballed into something else. And now they're there for the something else, but we've got to address the thing that's been there for 25 years.
Hmm.
So it doesn't mean that we can't have almost miraculous effects by the different strategies that I've learned to apply. But the longer you've had something, the more things are impacted. You got to peel back the layers now to get to the original cause. And that's why my book, Pain Culprits, I teach people how things are connected,
Mm.
because everything is connected to everything else. I've helped people who had chronic neck pain by fixing their ankle function. I mean, I had this one guy come into the clinic who had been seeing somebody else maybe 8 or 9 sessions, and they were doing the conventional PT. And I don't mean to sound disrespectful, but he was getting hot packs and ultrasound and range of motion, which was useless.
Mm.
And I saw this in the documentation, and I asked him, do you mind if we look elsewhere? And he was open to that because it impacted his ability to do his morning walks, which he loved and he didn't want to give up. And when he was walking, his neck would start to bother him.
Mm.
And so I asked him if he'd ever sprained his ankle, because I know how things are connected. And walking requires really good ankle function. And he
Mm.
said, oh, countless times in college. I looked at his ankles and he was really lacking a specific range of motion required for a healthy gait. And so I mobilized his ankles, taught him how to lengthen the muscles that had shortened over the years. He never had to return.
Wow.
His neck pain was completely resolved by restoring proper ankle function so that when he walked, it wasn't creating this chain reaction up through the body, aggravating his neck.
Mm.
So it's when you understand how everything's connected, the
Mm.
knee is the lower hip and the upper ankle.
Mm-hmm.
When people are seen as a knee and no one's looking at what's happening above and what's happening below, they're going to be limited in how much they can help them.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with the shoulder. The shoulder is greatly impacted by how the trunk is functioning, how the hips and the pelvis are functioning. The low back is impacted by the trunk above and the hips below.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to see someone as a whole body. And, the medical world is great for seeing us as body parts. When my mom was 15 days before her death, she ended up in ICU. And it was interesting how no one saw her as a person. She had somebody for her kidneys and somebody for her lungs and somebody for her this and her that and her. It was just insanity plus. No one was communicating. No one saw her as a whole person.
And you're talking about the body parts as a whole person, and then there is the whole nutrition, and there is the whole mind body connection that we also need to take into
Absolutely.
account.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mindset, belief systems.
Mm.
If you believe you're going to get a cold every fall, you get a cold every fall. It's crazy. I've learned to reject things. If I get a weird little symptom, I reject it. Get out of my body. You don't
Mm.
belong there. But I could also perseverate on that. Oh, I wonder if that's because I did this, or I wonder if it's because I didn't do that.
Mm.
And then you kind of accept it. Yeah. And I don't mean to sound, kind of like woo woo about it, but our brain, I mean, neuroscientists have concluded that our thought process impacts our immune system, our health, everything.
Mm. Yeah, that's why placebo works.
Yes. Yes. And nocebo, which is the
And
opposite.
nocebo,
When you
exactly.
believe it's going to harm you and it's not possible.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk about these methods that I think you're teaching, MELT method, or do you pronounce it
Oh,
melt?
the melt
The
method.
melt.
Yes.
So what's that, and how does it
Yes.
differ from traditional therapy or traditional methods?
Right. So it's probably easier to kind of back up for just a moment and explain that I use sort of a four-prong approach.
Mm-hmm.
So, you think of a four-legged stool as a lot more sturdy than a three-legged stool. So
Mm-hmm.
the first thing I do is I ensure people are nourishing their body properly. And that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
I spent, I think it was 900 hours earning my nutrition educator diploma, which is based on the Institute for Health Studies is not industry funded. So it's completely independent and completely based on data and what the data shows,
Mm-hmm.
what the research has proven. So the interesting part about that is people don't understand that a lot of times what they're putting in their mouth is promoting their pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people, the food, all food, anything you put in your mouth, including liquids, is either positive or negative. There are no neutral foods, no neutral drinks.
Mm-hmm.
And people will try to tell me, but water's neutral. I say, no, it isn't. It's positive
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people aren't hydrated enough
Mm-hmm.
and they're drinking things that dehydrate them beside. But food will either promote chronic inflammation, promote chronic pain, or it will fight chronic inflammation or fight pain.
Mhm.
So it's very important that people understand that. And so that's a very important leg of the stool.
Mhm.
The MELT method is a method that I studied about 15 years ago. I learned it, became a certified instructor in it, and I've been using it for everyone, including myself. It's an amazing method. And what it does is it addresses Sue Hitzman is the creator of the MELT method. She's a brilliant research scientist and very, very gifted and skilled with working with people with her hands, as well as her knowledge. And the MELT method, what it does is it's a way for you to do self-care for your own fascial system. And the fascia is this connective tissue
Mhm.
that's very highly innervated. It's also very fluid. And most of the time we're sitting on it. And so it compresses, it dehydrates. And the same thing, when people get pressure sores from their laying in bed too long, that's that connective tissue. That's the injury that happens. And it also can pull your posture into some very unhealthy postures. And I've taken people who were 90 whose head was so far forward they needed two pillows behind their head when they lay down. And I've performed 15 minutes of MELT method with them on a very specially designed roller. It's not some hard foam roller that you can iron your body like a shirt with. And seen their posture completely change in 15 minutes and get them back on the floor to do a rest reassess, and their head is back where it belongs or much improved. So our bodies are very adaptable,
Mhm.
and we can change things. I mean, I've had people take my classes and they've gotten taller, but it's because we've hydrated and lengthened those fascial lines.
Mhm.
And the last thing I'll say that might help people to better understand is fascia surrounds every part of your body, every cell, every structure, every organ, every vessel, every muscle. And so, depending on what anatomy book you study, we have about 600 muscles in our body, but we really have one muscle separated by 600 compartments of fascial tissue. And it really impacts how our bodies function. It's kind of this architectural structure part of our body, like a scaffolding that
Mhm.
sort of holds us up against
Mhm.
gravity.
Mhm.
And so it's a fascinating system. And the MELT method is a beautiful way. I've seen it. I've taught classes in it at the local community college. All my private consults learn it. And I teach monthly classes on it as well to the
Wow.
public.
Wow. Are you
So
mentioning that in your books as well?
it is mentioned. Yes. Yes. I
Mhm.
have a chapter on effective self-care methods,
Mhm.
and that is in there. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So I
And
think you
then
mentioned two parts of the stool, two legs
yes,
of the
yes. So
stool.
that's two legs. So the other two legs are there's something called total motion release that I learned from Tom DeLonzo Baker, who is a phenomenally gifted clinician,
Mhm.
a very good teacher. He was a math teacher who taught other math teachers how to
Wow.
teach better. He traveled around the country doing that. He then became a PT, very skilled and gifted in phenomenally effective manual skills. However, he came across this method where, and science does back this up. And I want to start with this preface. Everyone knows if someone has a stroke, if the right side of their brain is impaired, the left side of their body reacts, and vice versa.
Mhm.
So we do have this right and left hemisphere. There's something called the corpus callosum between those hemispheres. There's a lot of things that happen, even with our vision. It crosses, it flips upside down. I mean, there's all
Mhm.
kinds of amazing things in that optic chiasma, chiasm, all these different ways that our body functions. So how TMR works, total motion release, is you work the opposite part to fix the part that has a problem.
Mhm.
And what's fascinating about TMR, and I've done this with someone who has phantom pain, phantom limb pain, say they had an amputation,
Mhm.
and the limb that's no longer there is just screaming pain.
Mhm.
And we treat the limb that is there, and it helps resolve the pain for the limb that's not there.
Wow.
So there's so much that can be done with this particular aspect of human physiology.
Mhm.
And so what Tom has done is he's devised this way where you can learn. He teaches lots of clinicians. I've used this in the clinic setting. I've used this with many, many people. I remember a woman who came in who had surgery on her shoulder, and she had very limited function. She was recovering from the surgery, and her therapist went on vacation. I get a lot of people when their therapist goes on vacation and we get to try fun things. And so, her goal was she had been doing just active range of motion, very limited. The clinician had left a note to start doing isometric strengthening, which basically is just pushing against something without movement. to get the
Mhm.
muscles start to activate again. So I asked her if she would be open to trying something different in addition to what was planned. I wasn't
Mhm.
going to leave that out. And she said, sure. And so I had her do work to the uninvolved arm. So we just had her do 15 straight arm raises. But prior to that, we had her test the other arm, and she could only bring that arm up maybe to here. And it was quite painful.
Mhm.
So we had her do 15 repetitions on her yummy side. And all of a sudden, she could do the yucky side up to like here. And she was, okay, what just happened? And I said, well, in the TMR world, if it works, you repeat it. So she did 15 more. All of a sudden, now the arm was like this, and she had very little pain.
Mhm.
And I mean, her jaw just about hit the floor. And for those people who think, oh, that's just a bunch of hooey, there's no way that could work. How the body's connected, how everything's connected is when you move a body part, it's a physics thing. There's an equal and opposite reaction that occurs somewhere else in the body.
Mhm.
So when she was moving this body part, she was mobilizing the entire shoulder girdle. She was resetting how the muscles were responding to the movement, even on the side that wasn't actively moving, because everything's connected.
Mhm.
I mean, the clavicles had, I mean, all kinds of things were happening when she was doing this. So it works, and you have more than one opposite. And I'll finish that
Mhm.
for this particular spot. So you have a right and left if you divide yourself this way. So the opposite, for instance, if I wanted to work my right shoulder, the opposite would be my left shoulder.
Mhm.
But I can also divide myself top and bottom. So the opposite of my right shoulder would be my right hip. I could work my right leg and
Mhm.
improve my right shoulder.
Mhm.
And then if you divided me diagonal, the opposite of my right shoulder would be my left hip.
Mhm.
So we have three opposites. And I've even done this in manual skills, working manually on a part that's away from the source of the pain. Well, it is the source of the pain, but it's away from where it's experienced. And so that's it.
Are
And
we
then my
still?
fourth leg is I would say it's kind of my raison d'etre. I know
Mhm.
I took 3 years of French, but I think my accent there was very poor. But the thing with the applied functional science, which I learned through the Gray Institute,
Mhm.
they teach movement professionals. And Dr. Gary Gray is the founder of the Gray Institute, and he is nicknamed the father of function. And there's
Mhm.
a reason for that. His passion, ever since he was a teenager, has been how everything's connected and how things work.
Mhm.
And so he has been able to discern everything that happens when someone takes a step and everything that's required for that, or when someone swings a golf club,
Mhm.
or when someone pitches a baseball,
Mhm.
or all of these different actions that we do consistently require an entire body's ability to function, but in very different ways. So, as a matter of fact, he's so skilled with golf that his company is partnered with Nike Golf
Wow.
because of the impact. He has worked with some of the highest name athletes you have ever heard of. And I can't name them, of course. That would be, he
Mm.
doesn't name them because that's HIPAA laws. You can't go telling, he doesn't name them. He was asked one time, what's the most famous person he's ever worked with? And he said it was his mom.
Ah.
I thought that was great. But he's fabulous in his knowledge. He's brilliant beyond when it comes to human function and how authentic movement happens.
Mm.
So this has become my passion because I've seen many people, they'll go to a gym every morning or every night. Those are the people I see in the clinic all the time. They get tendonitis, tendinopathy, tendinosis because they're isolating body parts. They're using machines that don't fit their body that cause external support, and their body doesn't have to provide internal support.
Mhm.
And so they think they're stronger than they are. Oh, I can do that bench press using the Smith machine or whatever. I can use that and I can lift this amount of weight, but the machine is stabilizing them. They don't have to. So then
Mhm.
when they're out in the real world and they have to stabilize themselves, they're not as strong as they think they are.
Mhm.
The same thing with isolating a muscle. I give this example a lot. If you go to put a heavy piece of luggage in the overhead compartment on an airplane, you're not standing there going, I better keep my elbows in. I better only use my triceps. I better not use any body part. That's not real life.
No.
And your triceps are going, what are you doing?
Mm.
How come the rest of the team isn't allowed to help me with this? How
Mm-hmm.
much weight are you asking me to push all by myself?
Mm-hmm.
So we end up with tendonitis. We end up with all these issues because of all of the movement gurus. And again, I don't mean any disrespect. People can only teach what they know, they can't teach
Mm.
what they don't know. But because it's inauthentic, it's not something the body would ever do in real life, it
Mm.
creates injury and insult. And because everything's connected, when you start training the body that way, chronic pain resolves
Mm.
really quickly.
Mm. It's the same idea of looking at individual parts, like we said at the beginning. When I walk into a doctor's office because I have a pain somewhere, and also when I go to the gym, it's also looking at only individual parts that are trained on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Today's arm day, today's
Mm.
leg day.
Mm.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm.
As long as you're allowing to bring the entire body to the party, you
Mm.
can focus on a body area,
Mm-hmm.
but you really can't isolate anything. Like I said, it's a physics thing. And there's always an equal and opposite reaction happening somewhere else in the body. And a lot of people, here's a quick example. If you're laying on the bed and you do a straight leg raise, so if you have pain, say you do a straight leg raise with your right leg and you have pain,
Mm.
you're going to think there's something wrong with the right leg. But the equal and opposite reaction that's happening is the left leg is pushing down into the bed with the same amount of force required to lift the right leg. So the problem could be the left, something going on with the left hip.
Mm-hmm.
But people are automatically thinking, oh, it must be the limb I'm trying to move.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Wow.
it's,
Wow. Wow. We've already learned so much from you up until now, but I know our time is limited. So I guess my last question to you is if you could give just one piece of advice to someone who is my age, I just turned 59, so I'm still not 60. So what can I do to really age well?
mm. So, well, obviously, there's not one thing that you
Mm-hmm.
can do, but I think probably the most important starting point is to seek out expert knowledge, expert advice, if you will, recommendations. And what I always tell people, the magic question to ask whenever someone is giving you advice or you're seeking knowledge is how long have they been doing what they're doing? And how many people have they helped?
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of best-selling books out there, even written by MDs who are not practicing medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the things that they've written about are more theoretical than proven in their own practice.
Mm-hmm.
When I earned my nutrition educator diploma, the experts I studied under have been reversing disease, eliminating the need for medication, and restoring people's health. And they've been doing that for 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
So their track record is stellar. If someone else gives me advice that's opposite what they say, I'm going to be really reluctant to believe what they're telling me.
Yeah.
And it'll be, okay, how many people have you helped with that advice and how long have you been doing that? That's the track record.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't me saying any kind of pride. This is just for over 30 years, I've been helping people
Yeah.
and it works.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of joke and say, I'm not all that brilliant. I'm just really gifted at finding brilliant people and learning what they know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I bring it to the public
Wow.
because most of the people I study from really teach professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And I want everyone to know this. Everyone needs to know this because everyone can age really well and move without pain. They just need to know the right things to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, wow. And one way, of course, is also to look out for you online because you said there are online programs
Yes,
and
yes,
also
yes,
your books. So where can
yes.
people find you?
Yes. Well, if they want to get an idea of how I teach and what I teach, my YouTube channel, absolutely free. They just
Mm-hmm.
have to type in my name, Eileen Kopsaftis, in YouTube, and they'll come across my channel. I have a lot of playlists and things. If someone has issues with plantar fasciitis, I've got a playlist on that. If someone has shoulder issues, I've got a playlist on that. Now, it's not curated where they're going to be able to resolve everything 100% on YouTube, but it gives them a very good starting point to understand. And I've had a lot of people contact me just from watching those videos going, it made such sense. And I tried what you did and it helped me. So they want to learn more.
Mm.
And then I have my Move Without Pain private club, which is like a Netflix subscription to movement education, but real movement education, 3D. And there's a free membership to plug you in, get you started. It's a 21-minute video where they can assess their movement in 3 planes of motion, and they can find where their culprits are. That's why I named my book Pain Culprits, because as I said, the knee is usually not the problem. It's the hip or the ankle or both. So they figure out where's the culprit in their body. And now they know where to focus so that they can better help themselves. And then there's all kinds of tracks on different body parts and things in the private club. And then I have my Have Lifelong Wellbeing Academy, which is for those who want to age without decline. Those who do not want to end up like they've seen their loved ones end up, or their neighbors or their coworkers. They don't want to end up in a nursing home. And I joke and I say, no one ever set a goal to go to a nursing home, but it does happen by default. You have to do something. You have to take active part to prevent that. And you have to know it's possible. That's huge. In my book, Aging Culprits, the first chapter is all about mindset, the narrative that you've believed, and I share the truth. And I could tell you story after story after story after story that negates the narrative we've been fed.
So it's like a common misbelief that
Correct.
you have unveiled.
Correct. The same thing with pain, that you're supposed to age with pain. Or I can't tell you how many people came to the clinic with a diagnosis of arthritis. And I found there was a mechanical issue going on. There were muscles that weren't working properly. There was a weak area of the body. There was something going on with the body mechanically, and we resolved their pain. I didn't wave a magic wand over their arthritis. And a lot of people are just told, oh, it's your arthritis, or, oh, you're getting older, or what do you expect at your age? And those are all lies from the pit of hell. They're not true.
Wow. That's a great final word. Thank you so much, Eileen. This was so insightful.
Thank you. I
really,
appreciate the opportunity, and I really hope that this helps a lot of people.
I'm very sure. And thanks to all our listeners and our audience. Have a wonderful time. Bye-bye. Until the next time.
This was Lead Well. Now, what is the one thing that you're taking away from this episode? Please share in the comments below, and do share the podcast with your friends and family, but only if you like it.